Welcome to NOCLIP, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermans.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Psychonauts 2, which was a game that was developed by Double Fine, published by Xbox Game Studios, and was released in 2021 on Windows, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Linux, and Mac OS.
And but first, if you could give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, Psychonauts 2 is a platformer, and it is the sequel to Psychonauts. I'm getting all the very obvious things out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I like about this, and it's something that we tend to avoid doing, but now I like the proximity between when we talked about Psychonauts, the original, and this game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if we knew that Psychonauts 2 was being released when we did that episode.
We did, because we talk about it a little bit.
Gotcha.
I re-listened to it today, because there were a couple of thoughts I had. And one of them was, I could have swore, I never played this as a kid, because I did not own an Xbox, and I thought the game was an Xbox exclusive game.
Mm-hmm.
And while doing some research today, I found out the reason I thought that is because it was originally being funded by Microsoft,
Mm-hmm.
but then they were taking too long and they cut all their funding, so they had to get it from somewhere else, and it ended up on everything. And there's a nice inverse with Psychonauts 2, where they were crowdfunding it, and then Microsoft came in and was like, we'll fund this and take as much time as you like.
Yeah. And it is weird, like, seeing the Xbox Game Studio thing come up. Like,
on your PlayStation?
Yeah. Like, Double Fine is, at this point, like, a fairly well-established studio. And I say well-established in the sense that people know about them,
Mm-hmm.
because it seems like they're hemorrhaging money at all times.
I don't know if it's that they hemorrhage money so much as they only ever get just enough money to make the thing that they want to make and nothing more.
Yeah. And it's weird because, like, the majority of games that they put out have been well received, at least by, like, the core audience that they put them out for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that way. And I think part of it is, like, they have a certain desire to put out something that has a production value maybe a little higher than most, like, on the indier side studios do.
Yeah, it's probably those LucasArts roots,
Mm-hmm.
because LucasArts has tons of cash. Or they did when they were still a game studio, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, like like when we talked about Hellblade, I can't remember the name of that studio.
It was Team Ninja?
That sounds right. It has Ninja in the title, I think.
Yeah.
But they had this whole thing. They were like, oh, independent, AAA, blah blah blah. We can make a game that looks like this. But in my head, I feel like Double Fine like embodies that idea to me. Or it's like they really do make games like an independent developer does. It's like a big part of the Double Fine Adventure documentary where Tim Schafer is like, oh my god. Like, whenever they go behind closed doors and talk about the money, he's like, fuck my life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like it really seems like they are very, for one reason or another, like dead set on like continuing to do that until the Microsoft buyout.
Yeah. Yeah, which is nice. I mean, it's not nice because, you know, capitalism has a tendency to not be very nice. But it was nice to see the Double Fine crew, so to speak, sort of come together on this. Because you had classic voice actors from, like, every single game that they've released independently. Both in the Psychonauts realm of people like Richard Horowitz, who plays Raz, and is also known as, you know, just like a cartoon voice actor largely. But they get to bring back Jack Black, and they get to bring back Elijah Wood, and things like that. Like,
yeah, who weren't in the first one.
Right. But did appear in subsequent Double Fine games over time.
Yeah, I don't know what the first game Jack Black did a voice in, but I feel like ever since he did, he's been in all of their games.
Yeah, I think the first one was Brutal Legend.
Yeah.
Which is a game that tricks you into thinking it's going to be a cool hack and slash game, and then turns into an RTS, and then you cry about it because you bought it on a console. Or maybe that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was cool to see sort of like the the evolution of this game via Double Fine's sort of like trajectory over the years, and to end up with Microsoft and making a game that actually seems like it was really well thought out and put together on a timeline that made sense for them. Basically, my final thoughts are that I think this game is good.
Yeah, it was nice to see. It's like very satisfying to see Psychonauts get like the sequel it deserved.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like there is a universe where this turned out a lot worse because of crowdfunding and things like that, not being able to get enough money to make something that looks this nice.
Yeah. Or plays as well as it does.
Yeah.
Which I don't know where you want to begin. But to me, like, the connection there between Psychonauts and Psychonauts 2 is one of the interesting things that struck me right away. This game takes place like one day.
Yeah, I think like with the VR game included, it's like 3 days later after the first one.
Yeah. Like you begin the game on a plane ride back from the events of the Rhombus of Ruin VR game.
Yeah. And then if
I never played.
Yeah, like if you hadn't played that, like the first game ends with you getting on a plane with the Psychonauts, so like you're none the wiser.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does seem like you just kind of got on the plane and then
landed at the headquarters.
Yeah, and they do make a couple of like cheeky cracks about it as well, like throughout the game. It'd be like, "Oh, you don't remember blah?" Is like, it just happened a couple days ago, and then Raz is like, "Yeah, it felt like 12 years or whatever."
Yeah, like Oleander will be like at the bar in the bowling alley, and he'll say something about how he's reformed or whatever from what he did, and he's like, "That was just a few days ago."
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of sort of like little sly references that you kind of expect from Double Fine at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I imagine that I probably will not include a big preamble about me complaining about Marvel movies, which is what we were recording as a sound test right before this.
Uh-huh.
But it's weird to me because I do feel like there's like an expectation of like everything in this game is a joke. And it is something that I appreciate. Or at least everything in the first game was a joke. And then everything in the second game you expect to be a joke. And you're surprised when sometimes it isn't.
Yeah, the tone's a little bit more evened out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, this game kind of feels like what it is, which is a sequel being made by people who were 20 years older than when they made the first one.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more even-kiltered.
Yeah, and it has, like... I mean, it has more mature themes,
mm-hmm.
but it would be difficult to just... It's hard to talk about the themes of Psychonauts 1 because they're all very explicit. It's all just like, this is like a representation of a particular mental illness, and that was like how they went about making their levels.
Yeah, it's more through the, like... It almost feels like a more like 90s cartoon lens, or like a comic book style thing, where it revels in the creativeness of its, like, cool sci-fi premise,
mm-hmm.
and really does not get into, like, the idea of mental health at all, like, beyond, like, a surface level to kind of serve the cool premise.
Right.
And this one, yeah, like, being, like, the culture we live in now and the fact that everyone's older and wiser, it acknowledges that angle, I think, like, tastefully.
Yeah, I agree, because it also doesn't tackle it in the way that, like, the after-school special does. Like, it's not like at the end of Psychonauts 2, they say, well, haha, we had a great time here tonight, but... And then go into, like, some kind of moralistic thing. It throws up a warning at the beginning that's like, there's going to be depictions of mental health in this game, etc., etc., and then it just does a Psychonauts thing. And the Psychonauts thing is to use those as sort of pastiche as they design a level loosely based around that and the personality. And it's something that we talked about really liking in the first game.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the levels to be weaker from a... How do I say this? Weaker from like a purely design perspective, like the big picture. But I also found this game to be so much more mechanically than the first game was that it didn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting at, because in my head, the way I was thinking about it was, and I apologize to myself mostly, but I'm going to go with the Dark Souls reference here. I remember, I think it was Offcast, we were just talking about Dark Souls 3 once, and being like, I feel like the boss lineup in this game is probably the most consistent and probably the best quality of the series, but it feels like maybe as a result, less of them are memorable. And I think that's the approach this game has. Like, I feel like the quality is like pretty consistently like very good across them all, but it doesn't feel like any of them stand out like a lot of them did in the first game.
Yeah.
This game does not have a Milkman Conspiracy equivalent.
Correct. I feel like it has one level that tries for it. In the Psy King Sensatorium. But doesn't get there. Like, and even like Psy King's is a much more enjoyable level to platform through.
And it's pretty ambitious too, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But then like Milkman just leaves a bigger impression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had more of that like edge to it. The first game did. Like I was thinking about this, like thinking back on it, like playing this game made me a little nostalgic for the first one, even though I just played it like
like a year
2
ago,
years ago. Or, yeah. But like, yeah, it has a lot of that like old, like, yeah, as I said, like that edge and like that kind of like personality, and like I don't know, there's just like a roughness to it that gives it some charm. And this definitely doesn't have that, but it's good in different ways.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, I think. The lack of an edge, because it feels like a much safer game in a lot of ways, especially from like a mechanical design perspective. It's a lot less safe if you consider like including gay people to be unsafe, which you would have, like, if you spend any time in the video games circles, sometimes that can be a little dangerous, but it plays it pretty straight.
Yeah, now I think they did that very well. The gay representation, because like they don't talk about it, and I think that's like makes it feel really like organic. And I think people who might roll their eyes or like not be happy with that sort of thing would probably be more accepting of it that way, because like they can just kind of like roll right on past it.
On a big levitation ball.
Yeah, on a big levitation ball. So, like, I think they played it pretty smart, where it's, like, the representation is there, and it's pretty impactful, that scene.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's, like, yeah, it's really well done, is all I'm trying to say. I think they walked that tightrope just right.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously the goal at any point is just to make...
Like, I'd be surprised if people got outraged about that.
Yeah. And, I mean, this is coming from the development team led by Mr. Shitface.
Isn't it Mr. Shithead?
Mr. Shit, yeah, I think it is Mr. Shithead. Classic anagram of Tim Schafer. No, it's got to be no, the F there. It is Shitface.
Okay.
My favorite mean-spirited joke about Tim Schafer aside, though, the goal always is just sort of like make your representative characters feel like real fucking people, like they are, and this game does a tremendous job.
Yeah,
of
and make
doing
it more incidental and like don't lampshade it.
Yeah, so we got a lot of good shit to get through, I think. Do we want to talk about levels from a mechanical perspective first, and then just kind of see where it takes us?
Sure.
All right. Or do you want to talk about psi powers? Let's talk about levels.
I think they will easily branch into each other, so it doesn't matter what order.
Yeah, it does seem like the true way to go about it. So yeah, this game's tutorial level was the most infuriating level for me, but like coming into it, having played Psychonauts 1 as recently as I had.
Okay. Oh, is it because it kept moving you to places and you couldn't go back and get the collectibles?
Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff that was like obvious foreshadowing for when you could come back with a better ability to do something.
Yeah.
And I just like wasn't able to at the time.
Yeah, it's somebody who's very the opposite of you when it comes to that stuff. They did do it really heavy-handedly, and it stood out to me as well.
It's weird because like especially like the dark thoughts.
Yeah, they
like,
got like 2 spots where those are there.
Yeah, and it's like right there, and I can see the figment that I want to pick up so badly, and I was like, I guess I can't do it yet. Got to come back later. But I do want to shout out this tutorial level is pretty light on the tutorial, as far as like it getting its points across go, and I really appreciate that. What I don't appreciate is that the tooltips are like I guess like area triggers. So even when you come back at max level in the game, they'll still be like press the R2 button to pop out the levitation ball.
Yeah, there were a couple of spots even later game where they put those in there and they show up every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just one of those unfortunate things that happens in some games, and luckily it doesn't happen too much in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like The Last Guardian. Yeah, no, I thought that this level was like a really great vertical slice and like a pretty great like representation of like what I liked about the first game. Like it not just gameplay, but also kind of like that tone and that pacing. Like it's snappy. It does feel like a comic book, like True Psychic Tales or whatever.
Right.
The comics Raz reads. It's just really stylish, and they do like a thing that was like in all the trailers where like Lobato keeps extending the hallway as Raz runs down it. Like there's some cool moments and visuals. And you get everybody working as a team, which is really satisfying. So yeah, it got me pumped up.
Oh, for sure. All the things that I said, not to minimize the effectiveness of the actual level. And it continues the thing that happened in the last level of Psychonauts 1, which is where you had 2 brains sort of like intermixing. So you had the office building stuff that was like an implant, and then the teeth and shit that were specifically is his name Dr. Lobato?
Yeah, Lobato.
Good joke. Good sticks joke that aged extremely well. But you get that like that melding of topography that's really nice. And by nice I mean gross as hell.
Yeah, they could put it in the veins and stuff in the gums.
Yep, real gross. But yeah, I really like the tutorial in this game, which is not something I get to say a lot because I feel like games kind of shy away from tutorials these days, and it's nice to see one that like knows what it's doing. This is obviously an experienced team.
Yeah, like I feel like they really do a great job of like updating or modernizing the first game. Like this feels like What If Psychonauts but made now. Like really well. Like I feel like in the way that like the writing is, in the way like the gameplay is, and in all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it having like a classic tutorial level just felt right.
I wanted to jump around a bit here, but I immediately fell into the trap of being like, oh right, the very next level actually also has something really cool about it. In the form of the like, I think this game does a really good job of getting like the overall concepts of things and giving you reasons to making sure that you understand the levels and what they represent. And the fact that that Hollis's level starts with you making this connection in her mind, and that is what changes it.
Snowballs.
And it changes it to the second half of her level. Is just really good. I really liked that as like a whole concept, and I kind of wish that it had been taken a little further.
Yeah, and it reinforces her backstory. Like in her mental vaults, you find that like she fucked around with someone else's brain, and like you see that like you just changing one thing did this much, and like so it puts into perspective like what she did.
And I've actually read people online complaining about how Raz was like so apologetic and he lost like how much of a badass he was, and I was like, he's like 10.
Yeah. And one thing I didn't even think about until I was reading some reviews are like, that's like, because I was thinking of it like mechanically. I'm like, it's really weird that they have the mechanic of the mental connections do all this cool stuff in this level, and then after this it's just like a zip between points thing. But then like someone pointed out it makes total sense narratively, because Raz messing with her mind and like fucking it up causes him to like change his opinion of like his powers, and after that he always asks everybody before he goes into their head.
Right.
And like I didn't even notice that. So I thought that was cool that there was a reason for that. I
did notice that he asked everyone before he went in, but I did not notice. It just seemed like common brain courtesy.
Yeah,
right?
But like he because in the first game he just like jumps into anybody's head.
Yeah.
That he feels like.
There'd be scenes where he like throws the fucking door.
When they're not looking.
Yeah.
And then he does the same to Hollis, so that they can go on the mission, and then it has negative consequences and he learns a lesson.
Yeah. It's really good sort of like evolution there. I never would have made the connection, I guess.
The mental connection?
Pun kind of intended there. Between like that event and not using the mental connection in the same way. But it does one of my favorite things in a game like this, and we'll talk about what kind of a game this is here in a bit, but where it takes this thing that you have a mechanical or narrative like express purpose for, in this case the mental connection, and allows you to play around with it a little bit and sandbox it, because you can make mental connections between the words in the brain other than the ones that are story required. And there's an achievement for if you like connect anger with socks and sandals. It's like everyone hates socks and sandals, and she goes on this big fucking like rant about it. And it's good. It's funny. It's got good jokes. And she has like, I imagine they kept her in the studio for a good while, just recording really dumb lines to say when you connect certain things. One of my personal favorites being, I can't believe people prefer open casket funerals. It's just such a bizarre string.
To shift topic a little bit, I liked Hollis's levels a lot, but they did make me think about when we talked about Kentucky Route Zero, we talked about the first episode of that game, because it's an episodic game, and we said that it felt like it sets up for a game that then doesn't happen, because it goes in a different direction, and I kind of felt like Hollis's levels did that for me in this, but to a lesser extent.
All right.
Because you get to you do the tutorial level, you get to the Psychonauts headquarters, and then you get knocked down a peg, and you get made an intern, and you get picked on, and it introduces all these new kids. It introduces Hollis, and like you're in the internship program, you have to go to her classroom. It's like it sets up all this new stuff, and then you do her levels, and then it just feels like it's back to the way it was in the first one, where it's like Raz goes off on his own, and he interacts with all the old members of the Psychonauts, and he goes into their heads. And then unless you do like the side content and stuff, is where those side characters now have the presence.
Right.
Same thing with Raz's family. It felt like they were just relegated to like side content, and that just felt really weird to me. It was like all these new characters, and they feel like they get sidelined.
Yeah, I like. This is one of those things where I have to sort of like exercise a bit of empathy for the regular person, I think, because I saw like as soon as they introduced Raz's family, which is like right after that level, it puts them in a category within your menu called optional missions. And it's super weird to me now, especially having played the game like to its conclusion, that I guess theoretically you can go through the whole game without ever going out to the questionable area and talking to them. Like, the only time that you have to go out there for anything main quest is just to get into the woods to get the
bees.
bee.
I think going and meeting them there is part of the main quest. Like, you just have to, like, find them.
Right.
But then you don't have to. Everything else is optional. But yeah, like, no, I did, like, some of the side content. Like, I engage with it, and, like, those characters definitely have a presence in the game, but they don't do anything in the story.
Yeah, and that's extremely weird. Like, they have to be there, especially to draw the connection at the end of the game. But they don't play a big role. They basically tell them to go fuck off to the woods, and they just do. Yeah,
like especially like the kids in the internship program. It's like you have this whole part at the end of Hollis's level where everybody works together and almost kind of feels like a Sly Cooper mission or something. It's like, it feels like really cool set piece, you know, characters popping in a little like action thought bubble thing, and just really, really cool and exciting. And then those characters just go away and they come back at the end, and I'm like, I don't remember like half of their names, like, and half is probably being charitable.
Yeah, they really end up,
and they all have cool designs. Like, I don't know, it just was so weird how little those characters were used.
Yeah, and they make connections as well between the first and second game with some of those characters. Like, I know Sam is Dogen's daughter and also the brother of well, he just goes by, no, Dogen, I forget what the last name is now. Dogen is the kid who has the exposed brain with the glass dome in the first game. And they're related, and also, like, one of the Psychic Six is their father. Right. And, like, there are things like that where it's like there's obviously some import placed on these characters. Especially at the very end, because what's-her-name shows back up and is, like, spying on the secret meeting, and then runs and gets everybody else so that there can be a big thing where a tidal wave happens. It's very interesting, like, story-wise, if you know the characters, but you probably don't. Yeah. Like, I think most people would not. But it also parlays a bit into, I really thought that they fleshed out the side content in the real world of this game just so much better than they did it in the first one.
Oh, yeah. Like, 1,000% better. Yeah. That was one of the things I found disappointing about the first one, is that it starts out feeling like it has like a proper hub world, and I feel like even like good 3D platformers made now just decide not to have them for some reason. And then, like, as it goes along, like, it really just kind of felt like it petered out in the first one. And this one, it's like an actual hub world. Yeah, it's great.
And it's got enough stuff going on in it that you can sort of like spend a little bit of time in between and pick up stuff as you go and have a lot of it last until the end game.
And like,
which is not what I did, of course. Yeah, but
that middle chunk of the game opens up in such a way where you can go to there's the 2 labs across the lake, and it's like you're incentivized to like take your time and explore before you go and talk to those guys. So it is well placed, I think, when that opens up.
Yeah, and it makes the game feel, you just said the word paced, and I was like trying to like go around it, but I can't. It makes the game feel more well paced because of its existence, even though it is entirely optional.
Yeah, it feels more modern.
Because I remember going and doing a lot of the optional stuff in the outdoor area. In like all of those zones, and I did it before I did any of Ford's levels, and then when I went back and did Ford's levels at the end of at the third one, it's like, you know, don't make sure you have everything wrapped up here if that you want to do right at this very moment, because like you're not going to come back to this for a little while. And I was like, that feels right, because I spent like a huge amount of time outside of doing the main levels And I was like, yeah, I'm probably close to the end of the game now. And then it just takes you to another hub area.
Yeah,
and there's like several more levels.
I remember you mentioning that to me as you were playing it. You were like, I don't feel like I'm like that far into the game for it to tell me that. I still don't have one of the merit badges. And I was like, I don't remember it telling me that when I got there. And I don't know, maybe they put out a patch when I was in the middle of playing it, that like quality of life patch. So maybe they took that out.
I guess it's possible. It still seems weird.
Or maybe I didn't notice it.
Right.
But like I really don't feel like the game told me that.
It's not... It makes sense for it to not be there because it isn't a point of no return.
No, it definitely isn't.
Yeah, there isn't one in the game. Like, there isn't a point of no return at all because at the end of the game, you do just get spit back out and can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But if you were going to call one that, it would be before you go into Nick Johnsmith.
Right.
And they do give you another warning at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So they were very careful to make sure that you did not accidentally progress the game without wanting to.
Right.
But yeah, it felt well paced and very bulky because there was that like additional content in the big open area. And I'm probably speaking as me just because it's what I like to do.
Yeah.
So...
No, yeah, it's definitely like, just as I said, very well placed in there, where it just feels organic to go and do some extra stuff at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like in the original game, that would have been like when you had the Linda interstitial, as we called it, and then it just like goes to, like, it would be like if it cut straight from Ford's level, like you took that part out. You went straight from Hollis's levels to Ford's levels, and then to the second hub area where like Cassie and what's his name, our Bob.
Yeah, Cassie and Bob.
Yeah, it's like adding that in the middle there, like really like fills it out.
Yeah, juices it up.
It juices it up. It's much juicier. It's juicy in the middle, just like Nick Johnsmith.
I'm glad that you made me think about this because I was actually struggling to remember what even the next level of the game was. That the Hollis part of this game is kind of giant. Like,
yeah,
you spent a ton of time.
And that, I think that adds to that feeling of like, it feels like that's really representative of what this game's gonna be like.
Uh-huh.
And then it just kind of goes back to like more in line with the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah, after Hollis, you get
Compton
yeah,
Pool.
the Cookoff, yeah. The Cookoff level and then Ford's levels.
Which I didn't. What did you think about Compton Bull's Cookoff?
I liked the level.
Mm-hmm.
The boss fight I didn't like so much. But I don't know. Like, it was fun. Like, I feel like it was just long enough that it, like, if it would have like gone longer, I feel like the gimmick probably would have worn thin for me.
Yeah.
But I thought it was like a fun difference in kind. Maybe it came a little too early in the game.
Yeah, I kind of think that as well.
That's probably the only thing bad I'd say about it.
Yeah. It was definitely something that was interesting, which is why I'm sort of like hesitant to say whether I did or did not like it.
Yeah, like, I really liked Glorious Theater in the original game, and one of the things I really liked about it is that it was a small area.
Yes.
That was really densely packed, and this level also has that going on.
Yeah. And it had like a little bit of a, I hesitate to call it a mini game, but like it had its like light world, dark world element to it.
Yeah.
And it was more of like a puzzle solving zone than most of the other areas in that game. So I can see the connection here. This is less of a puzzle thing and more of just a figure out what all of this stuff does. But I'm pretty medium on it. It's probably one of my less preferred levels.
Yeah. It might actually be my least favorite, but I thought all the levels were good.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's no stinkers in this one.
I have one stinker. It might
yeah?
just be a me opinion. And it's coming up next. It's
okay.
Ford's bowling alley.
Oh, the bowling alley.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think of all of the Ford levels as one level.
Sure.
But no, yeah, I think that's actually a good call. That's down there too. I probably would have liked it less if I didn't get all the figments my first go through.
Oh yeah, I honestly, like, going back for figments wasn't a huge deal. I thought that I really liked the part where you had to scale the unfinished building on the ball, like, that is an interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But then a lot of the level was just like, oh, you're going too fast, so you gotta, like, navigate a turn with jumps and stuff. And it's like, the game isn't built for this.
Yeah, there were so many of the ball returns that I found, like, it was actually, I would try a thing and I'd be like, this seems a little too hard. Like, I don't want to roll across this neon sign. I just jumped off the ball and just ran across it. And I could just do that. So I was like, that might be the big brain play.
That was definitely the big brain play. I did the smooth brain play of staying on the ball. My brain is smooth like a bowling ball.
Yeah, no, that's a good call out.
But also, if we do want to lump Ford together, and I don't mean for discussion purposes, I mean just for this hypothetical, then Ford is probably the weakest brain for me, because I think that I liked his letter game level.
Oh, yeah. The mail sorting.
Yeah, a little bit more than the Cookoff, but I think it's like my second or third least favorite thing.
I liked that one, and I think it might just be a nostalgia thing, because it made me think of TikTok Clock from Mario 64. Like, it felt very Mario to me. Like, that idea of, like, all the mail flying around.
And I hate TikTok Clock, so that's probably what it is.
I mean, it is a very hard level. That is actually not a Mario 64 hot take. But yeah, I liked that one, and I liked the hair cutting one too.
That one I think is good.
Yeah,
just genuinely. It did have the lice section. The first lice section took me a long time to figure out, because I am a dummy.
Couldn't hit the button.
Yeah.
Like, I swear I tried that like 3 times and just missed the button.
Right.
So it took me a while too.
Yeah. But that seems more like it's either a readability problem on the levels part, which is like a fairly minor complaint,
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Or it's us being dumb, in which case we can't really...
Oh, okay, a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah.
I liked that those levels were short, though. Like, there's something about that, like, once again, like, I just felt like really good pacing to me, where it's like, you just did Hollis's level, which was really long, and it felt good to have, like, a handful of short ones all in a row.
Yeah.
To me.
They are... Yeah, I like that they're short, and I understand the resistance to doing a short level in a game like this, because it does seem like they put a ton of effort into making them as visually distinct as possible. So it represents a lot of work to have, like, a bunch of little short levels. But they do this. They have your tutorial level, a bigger level, and then 4 kind of small levels, because sandwiched in the middle there, you have the game's biggest giant level. No, I mean the Psyking's Sensatorium.
Gotcha.
Yeah, which has its own hub world and fast travel system.
But you made me think there that, like, that's right when they give you the hub world is when they give you the shorter levels, and that also feels like it goes together.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You
sandwich between the 2 biggest levels. Yeah,
right.
Is what you were saying.
Yeah, so do we want to tackle that Sensatorium then?
Sure.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my favorite or not.
I don't think that it's mine.
Like, I love that it's cell shaded. The difference in visual, like, isn't that dramatic, but, like, it's just enough that it really pops. Like, it really does look like one of those psychedelic posters that's all over the level.
It's a classic blacklight poster.
Yeah, I like the whole idea of, like, putting the band back together, and the band is all, like, just weird body parts. It's really, like, it's really emblematic, I think, of, like, what's great about Psychonauts. Like, it's just such a cool concept, and it leans into that art direction. Like, the standout part is when it pulls a Mario Galaxy, and, like, you walk around a curved part of the level, and you crest over it to see, like, the giant eyeball statue, like, sitting in, like, the meditation pose.
Yeah.
On the horizon. Like, it's just so cool. And that one, you also have Jack Black talking to you the whole time. which is pretty fun.
I wanted to mention this, but I actually have now totally I've forgotten, and in addition, I was not able to quickly find it. Yeah, having Jack Black talk to you is great, but also all of the other, like, having the other members of the Psychic Six represented as, like, all of these other little characters.
And you might not notice it right away.
Yep. Is really, really good. I think that they did a super good job of, like, making that fun and also having, like, a good banter. Like, this is the most you ever get to spend with these characters together. Because at the end of the game, it's only like a pretty brief scene with all of them
action-y.
back. Yeah. And so you get this, like, nice minute of, like, even before you're, like, explicitly told who they are, to see how they interact and what they say and do. And it's just good shit.
Yeah, it's great. It's great shit.
It's great shit, even.
Yeah. I just feel like you couldn't do the concept better. Of, like, a Psychonauts level that's like a psychedelic, like acid trip 60s thing. Ride around in a little van on the map. God, what was the name for it? It was clever. Was it just the Feel-mobile?
It might have been the Feel-mobile.
So, yeah, I don't know. Just really good.
Yeah. But I was trying to remember there's a line of dialogue that you can get, and I don't know if it's something that you have to go to a specific place to trigger or not, but you can talk to the hand guy, Otto, like, analog, and he'll be like Raz asks if his name, if he's thought about changing his name, because his name is like Mr. Feelings or Mr. Feely or something, and he just lists off a progressively worse and worse list of, like, suggestive, horrible names for somebody who is a big hand, and it's super fucking funny, and it really embodies sort of, like, because the main, like, the enemy they introduce in that game is the panic attack, which, like, blacks everything out, and it's this very, like, hectic sort of fight, and it's where you get, obviously, the time stop ability, which I think you've already mentioned. And so it has this, like, really harsh introduction, and then immediately is just, like, the most, like, colorful, nonsensical part of the whole game. I don't think this is my favorite level, but it's gotta be close to it. The platforming feels really natural in it also.
Yeah, like, I think... like, the last couple levels are all my favorite, much like the first one. But I think this one, the Sensatorium, it was a longer level, but I felt like it never had a part that I disliked, or, like, a moment where I was like, I don't know, it just was fun the whole way through.
Yeah.
And I feel like that it is my favorite now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and it's a good time. Do we want to, like, let's take a pause, because I think this is the point where we're about to jump into the second, like, half of the game, essentially, which is 3 levels, but they take a long, long time to do.
Yeah.
And talk about sort of, because that level unlocks that time stop ability that now we've both mentioned, and now it's just repeating. It sounds bad. And it's debatably one of the more significant new abilities that you get in this game. Maybe not debatably. It's really strong. It's a really good ability, and it works surprisingly well. There's a ton of little things that are planted in the game to, like, make you think about, like, oh, what do I do to get past this obstacle or whatever. It's a really fast water wheel and shit.
Yeah.
You're like, what the fuck is that? Like, what point does that serve? It's like, oh yeah, because you can then freezing climb up on it.
Yeah.
I'm honestly a little disappointed in how it got implemented as far as, like, actual platforming goes. Though I guess I don't really know what to do other than slow down something moving really fast. But you unlock a few new abilities in this game that weren't in the first one. And I was wondering, like, what was your hot bar? What did it look like for most of the game?
My hot bar was levitation was on L2 always, because that's where it started and I never moved it. And then I had usually Psy Blast on R1, Pyrokinesis on R2, and then L1 was usually... I can't remember what was on L1. But that was one of the ones I would swap. I would always swap L1 and R2 out for other things. But I tried to keep like a main like 2 or 3 in as often as possible to minimize switching.
Yeah, I basically did. You had like the goofy stance version of what I did, which
oh, you had it the other way.
Yeah, like mine was R2 levitation because that's where it started in the original Psychonauts.
See, I didn't remember that. I just knew that I left it where it started in that one, and that's what I did in this one.
Yeah, I had Psy Blast on R1 at all times,
yeah.
And then L1 and L2 were my like flex spots that I put whatever. For like combat and stuff, there's like very little reason to use things like mental connection.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are pins that make them better in combat.
It was the telekinesis, just the hand to pick them up and throw it was what I usually kept on L1.
One of the better pins, because I experimented with a bunch of the pins, and so many of them are like really limited in their use.
Mm-hmm.
One of the better ones I found was there's a TK, a telekinesis upgrade, that is just like you can just always throw stuff. Like, even if there's not an object, you just pick something up off the ground. And it actually makes telekinesis useful, and not the one that I hated switching to, because I had to be like, oh, I gotta do the single telekinesis puzzle in this area. So I go over, get in the menu, if I can put it in.
Yeah, I liked throwing things at enemies with it.
That makes sense.
I just had the habit of using it from the first one.
Right.
I think
I just didn't use it there either.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
But yeah, okay.
But yeah, like, you would swap in mental connections all the time, and then once you got time slow down, that also came in a lot. So
yeah, the time bubble is probably my favorite new addition, just because it feels like it's very versatile.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I feel like they did a really good job with the new abilities, because it's like hard to remember what they're replacing.
Right.
Yeah, like mental connections and the time bubble both felt like perfect additions.
I agree. And we haven't talked about the level where you get it yet, but projection felt kind of weak to me.
Oh, the little
your little drawing
your little
guy.
Clone guy. Mm-hmm. See, to me, that felt like it just suffered from last unlocked ability syndrome, where because it is it's like unlocked in like the second to last level, so it doesn't get a lot of time to be used.
And that's true, but even when they do use it, I feel like
it's not fleshed out, really.
Yeah,
you just pull some levers.
You pull levels and you can go in mail slots, and that's pretty much it.
I like the idea. Like, if they made a Psychonauts 3 and they didn't bring that one back to like try and flesh it out, I would be disappointed.
Yeah.
But we haven't talked about clairvoyance.
Oh yeah, clairvoyance, the continual
making a return from the first one, and they did make an effort to make it more useful, but it still proves to not be very useful.
To piggyback on that a bit, one of the thing that they did to make it more useful is that they would occasionally give you little like money caches where you can like, if somebody has an icon above their head, you can use clairvoyance on them. And then they also put it in one of the enemy types.
Yeah, it's not panic attacks, bad moods.
Bad moods, that's it.
Yeah, that was one thing I was gonna mention is in like the merit badge abilities, the power ups, whatever you want to call them, feel like they're much better implemented in this, because I feel like they didn't really use them in the enemy designs in the original.
Right.
And it's obvious they made a clear effort to do that in this one, and it makes the combat just a lot better.
Yeah, it feels a lot more dynamic.
Yeah.
I think it has a bit of a weakness when it feels like you're switching mid-combat a lot.
Yeah.
But I didn't think that for 90% of the game until they introduced bad moods. And then immediately I was like, you mean I have to use clairvoyance? And immediately I was like, no, fuck that.
Towards the end of the game, it is kind of tough because like you'll have to switch out. Like a judge will come out, so you're like, okay, I need telekinesis to throw his hammer at him.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, I need the pyrokinesis for the blob guys, and I need the time stop for the panic attacks, and you're like, just switch everything out.
Yeah. And it's like, you're not going to take levitation off.
Yeah,
even though it does nothing in combat.
You never take that off.
Yeah.
Or you will die.
There is like somebody from Double Fine listening to this right now, like, why is everyone so fucking attached to levitation? It's like, you're complaining that you couldn't use 4 powers, and it's because you physically had 4 spots and weren't using them.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you don't ever take away telekinesis. Let me talk about telekinesis briefly, and I think we'll just take a break, and come back and we'll talk about the rest of the levels and shit. But I wanted to complain about telekinesis, which is blasphemy.
I don't know about that, but
I think there's a single change that they could make to this game, and it would become like almost as good of a platformer as like a Mario game. Because I feel like this game focuses on different things. It isn't a Mario game. It's not even really a big rooms games. It's like a small rooms games.
Yeah, it's more about dense level. It's more Banjo-Kazooie than it is Mario.
Yeah. There's a lot of like little individual areas that have like their own solutions, and once you figure it out, then you're on to the next thing. But I think this game works really well as a collectathon, more so than the original game did.
Mm-hmm.
But telekinesis has this like little speed bump to it as being like a badge power. I feel like if they had put it on like a face button that was just like your run button was to pop up on the ball. Because when you play a Mario game, like just think like a 2D Mario game, you press the run button and then you're running faster at the end. Like it doesn't have to play an animation. And I even like the way that levitation changes your physics because it's dynamic, it's interesting. But it's like a little bit awkward to put on, and you can't really just use it in basic platforming because they have like your jump height and length sort of decided when they build the platforming. So if I want to go across some steps quickly, I can't use levitation, or I can, but it's awkward and hard because your jump now has a different arc and thing to it. I don't know if this is a fixable problem in terms of, or if it is a problem to anyone at all that isn't me. But I felt like it would have been, especially going back for all the collectibles and stuff, it would have been interesting to see it like more of a natural part of your movement than it is.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It does feel like there's a button mapping like solution in there that could make it feel a little bit more natural. Like your punch attack is just square. That's not like, you don't have to equip telekinesis to do that.
Right.
So yeah, something like that where if one of the abilities could be mapped to a face button, it would help a lot. Mm-hmm. And yeah, levitation feels like the one, like the candidate that makes the most sense.
Yeah, especially if your playtest group is us.
Yeah, well, we think that. And...
we talked about this on the first game and on this one.
Yeah.
Levitation never moved. Like, it just had to be there.
It ties into your jump.
Yeah.
Like, you always want to have it.
Mm-hmm. It gives you your float ability.
Mm-hmm.
And, your long jump is essentially that. Like, run, long jump, and I guess the flood would be the Mario counterpart.
Sure.
Like, these are all, like, traditional sort of platformer abilities, but then they're tied to a power-up. And your high jump as well, because you get the bouncy ball upgrade. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's such a good mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
That if it was like, what I'm complaining about is if they could make a good mechanic perfect.
Yeah.
Which might be a little bit like pie in the sky, but it felt like that. It was like, it's still the best by a million miles, and honestly, it would be improved by 1 clairvoyance usefulness if it was changed. So just the smallest amount, the tiniest amount of usefulness.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my bit that I did on levitation.
I feel like you could almost take out the punch move.
Yeah.
And because like and then just make square like the levitation ball button.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like I mostly shot things, if I'm being honest.
I feel like it's just the way that the combat's designed, at least for me. It always feels better to like fight at range. And I'm me, who loves melee combat and like never does range. I do range. Like I love setting things on fire and shooting them with Psy blasts.
Yep. Oh yeah, Pyro's so much better in this game than it was.
Oh yeah, when you get it all the way upgraded and it's huge.
Well, even like in the first game, it just like selected something.
Yeah, it was just
highlighted
one thing,
a target.
and it had like a little temperature meter that filled up.
Yeah, this being an AOE and the explosion radius being visualized, I think
it's much
really,
better. Yeah,
so good. It felt really good to go back and burn those paintings.
Yeah. And then there's all those little times where like you can light a fire and like a cute thing will happen. Stuff like that.
Or you light a fire and then you use the only better psychic power, levitation, to fly up in the air. Yeah. Oh god. Would you want to light a fire under the rest of this podcast after the break?
I sure do.
All right. Welcome back. We took our break sort of like smack dab in the middle of the game, so it seems like it was a good choice. Congratulations! Round of applause for us. All right, good job. So yeah, after you get through the forward crawler part of the game, you get spit out in a entirely new hub world, which has basically 2 levels and then the final boss. These levels were pretty good.
Yeah.
And it contains what I think is my actual favorite level in the game, which is Cassie's collection.
Yeah, that's the other contender for me. I don't know. There's something about it where it felt like maybe there were a few too many ideas in there for me. Like, because I liked the main part of the library a lot, but then like it felt like shifting to like the city part with like the ocean of the ink and everything. Well, that part was cool. It almost kind of felt like a scrapped part of a different level that they kind of tacked onto this.
Yeah, a little bit.
It felt like visually a little bit different than the rest of it. But that's a minor complaint. It's still a great level.
Yeah. If I have a complaint about Cassie's collection, is that it is a bit overlong.
Yeah, it's a very long level.
But you'll notice, dear listener, that JJ did not come running back to the podcast to do an episode about Psychonauts 2. And I wish that I could, in good conscience, recommend a platformer to JJ. But this would be the level that I tried to sell him on.
It's like one of the last ones.
Yeah. Because I feel like there's a lot of humor in here that's just really, really well done. The thing that jumps out at one of my favorite lines in the whole thing, and I don't know why this stuck with me so much. I think it was just how unnecessary it was. Is there's like a whole section of this level where you're talking to like cutouts, illustrations from books that are like personified as people.
Little illustrations of characters that have been cut out of the books, and then if you go around to the back of them, there's words on the back, which was a nice detail.
Yeah, so it looked really cool, and it fit thematically. The characters that you are like interacting with as NPCs in the game are also all cutouts like that. So it's kind of got this interesting sort of like theme that goes through the whole thing. But there's just this one section where there's just like a model of the human anatomy like the musculature system. And this character, unlike the majority of these characters, actually has like dialogue trees that you can go down.
I thought there was a surprising amount of them they did.
Yeah,
not a ton.
Definitely
but...
more than you would think.
Yeah,
more than are in other levels.
By far, yeah.
Yeah, and at one point you can just be like, "Does it hurt not to have any skin?" And he just responds by saying, "To be free of flesh is to be free of pain." And it's like, look at this guy. They put this guy in the game essentially to make this very stupid joke. And I loved that. And I felt like a lot of this level was that. It was a lot of things that didn't need to be there, but were, and it was great that they were.
Yeah, I liked the little setup and payoff, if you want to call it that, of like, you meet, like, one of the first little paper NPCs you meet is the Lady of the Lake from Arthurian legend. And she just mentions how she gave her sword to a knight fighting a dragon or whatever. And then you meet that knight later on in the level, and he is fighting a dragon, but they're really just kind of like arguing with each other, bickering with each other. And then if you go back later, when you're trying to like wrap up all the collectibles, the dragon has burned him, and he's just a pile of ash. That was fun.
Yeah, and yeah, the fact that they were able to incorporate like a little storyline, into the level. Also worked really well, and it makes sense for the book-based level that it would have little stories to it.
Yeah, there's also like a wizard, and Raz asks him something like, "Do you have any spells that can let me like deal with water or something like that?" And the wizard is just like, "Yes." And then that's all he says.
Yeah.
Speaking of JJ, I just feel like JJ would think that was really funny.
Yeah, that's why I think this would be a great level to try and sell him on Psychonauts. And then he'd play the rest of the game. Really, it's not anything like this.
I mean, that's what he did with the first one. Like, he said people talking about Milkman Conspiracy made him want to check the game out. He played up to that point, and it was like, well, it definitely won't get any better than this. And he stopped playing.
Yeah, reasonable.
I mean, at that point, you're already like over halfway through. You might as well just finish it.
That's true. But yeah, other than that, like Cassie's collection as a level, the thing that makes me love it is the visual style and the tone and the characters and stuff. As far as platforming go, it's debatably one of the most expansive levels. There's a lot of complicated like jumping sections. Yeah, like they actually, one thing I thought this game also did a lot better than the first one is like it continued using the power-ups after you got them. Like it made good use of the time bubble, even though you had like just gotten that one. I guess depending on what order you do. I think you can do Cassie Bob's and Bob's in either order, but I think I did Cassie first. But yeah, even though I had just gotten it, I felt like it made like a good use of it in the next level, like because it had all the closing drawers and stuff. Yeah, I don't know. It did that with everything else, like lots of mental connections and things sprinkled throughout. Yeah, and it incorporates a lot of even like little ancillary stuff. Like it's one of the few levels, like mind levels that includes the rail grinding as a mechanic, which it doesn't come up too often. A lot of just like kind of good shit. Like it feels to me like that was the level where everything sort of culminated, and it was the last level that I did before the end. So, do you want to talk about Bob's Bottles? Yeah, I liked this one. The way it was broken up, like on the little globe that you sailed around on the door. Not the most engaging way to get around, but I think it worked just because it was different. Sure. But yeah, I like that you went into the bottles and then the levels were in there. Like, I think it's one of those things this game does really well is like non-Euclidean space or like that Mario Galaxy style thing where like sometimes you'll walk around the side of things and like it does it in a way like sparingly in a way that like it's always impactful when it happens, I think. And so yeah, like sliding into the bottles and there being levels in them was pretty cool. Yeah. But yeah, and I think all like each bottle section was good and yeah, I just think it was really solid, but it doesn't quite stand out as much as
the previous 2 levels.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for me, I don't love Bob's level. One is because it also feels very long, especially like when you feel like you're approaching. I didn't think so. It might have just been me the way that I've played it, but that's fine. And the sailing thing is like cool in concept, but then like there are all these islands that you want to go to, and all that's on them are like some rupees and maybe an NPC, some figments.
Just a purple rupee in the chest.
Yeah, and you're like, this doesn't really feel worth it to explore, which was a downside.
It did have a really funny joke, though, where you talk to Lily, and she has a different voice actress, and, like, Raz asks her, like, how does Bob know what you look like? And he's like, my dad sent him pictures, and he's like, he's never heard you speak, though, right? And she's like, how do you know? That was pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I liked actually having those little conversations with the characters.
Then Truman is also there, and he just says, you're fired.
Uh-huh.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and so that's all fine. Like, I didn't have too much of a complaint about the sailing part of it. Honestly, the only thing that I didn't like about the level, but there's a lot of it, is the parts with the head that flies around.
Oh, yeah.
And my problem is twofold. Is one, it's a mechanic that makes you wait, and I'm me, so I didn't like waiting.
Sure.
But then the other thing is that he has like 10 very good barks.
Oh, and they repeat.
But yeah, they sure happen a lot more than 10 times.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
You just have to reduce the frequency, and it wouldn't have gotten half as annoying.
Yeah.
But, man.
That was another, though, the swinging and moving around heads felt like a good chance to use the time slowdown.
Right, which I saw you do, but never thought to do when I was playing. I mean, honestly, if it was slower, that sounds even worse to me. There's a badge you can get that makes anything in your time bubble go faster instead. Maybe I could have tried that. Just make the platform unreasonably difficult in order to wait less. Also, I didn't love the boss fight. I thought the boss fight was very long.
Oh, yeah.
And kind of a little tedious.
Yeah, I feel like this should, like, if there's like a TV tropes page, but for video games, that probably exists, right? Mm-hmm. And I should probably know what it's called, but like,
I think it's just TV tropes.
Oh, it's just TV tropes.
Yeah.
Okay. There should be a page for this kind of boss fight, because there's a very similar thing in like Kingdom Hearts 3 with like the Davy Jones fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I've seen it other places. Like there's something in the middle, and like you whirlpool around it.
The whirlpool boss fight would be a good name.
Yeah, and it's also similar to God, I think it's called, like, it doesn't matter. But the boss in the Spirit Temple in Twilight Princess has the big skeleton in the middle, and you ride the spinner around it. And boss in middle, ride in circle around boss.
Yep. The since it was on my mind, the cyclone frog in Wind Waker, which isn't really a boss fight. But...
yeah, the Wind Waker, the colossal squids or whatever they're called.
Oh yeah.
It's exactly that.
Yep. Got a lot of whirlpool bosses lined up for this example. A lot of times we'll be like, this happens all the time,
and we won't be able to think of it.
Yeah, just be like, but just trust us. This time we came prepared. Citation not needed.
Citation.
Yeah, it's PSY TATION. But yeah, that would be it. And honestly, like I wasn't in love with boss fights overall in this game.
Definitely a step up from the first one, I thought.
I was going to say this is the one area where I felt like it was a step down. I feel like there were a lot of memorable bosses in the first one.
I just, once again, re-listened to the first episode, the episode we did on the first game today, and that was like one of the things we talked about is we were like, all the boss fights are bad. Except for Linda. Yeah. Basically, it's what we said.
The Linda boss fight was good. I remember liking Coach Oleander's fight.
Not
the tank one.
We don't actually talk about that.
Okay, I believe it.
I think the final boss is something that you say you also don't like, but maybe for different reasons.
Well, I don't mean the final boss.
Oh,
which I don't like. It's got a lot of
the superhero one.
Yeah.
Those are the two we call out, Linda and the superhero Oleander fight.
All right, so maybe it was just those two.
Yeah.
Oh, because there's also the drawing tank one. That's
that one sucks.
Not the final boss, but the final boss is similar, and those are both bad.
Yeah.
So maybe not. Maybe Psychonauts is just a game series that doesn't do bosses very well.
We've had this discussion plenty of times, but like bosses are hard to do in platformers.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the Mario series, a lot of the 3D ones anyway have like a history of like having a couple at the beginning and then just throwing their hands up at it. But so yeah, like it must just be really difficult to develop for, because it happens so often that they're just like okay at best.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think that we've talked about a platformer on the podcast where we really praise the bosses.
Yeah, the only one I can think of is Mario Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Has good bosses.
So we need to crack that code. You would think that this game would work better because it has so many combat abilities.
Yeah, and it's actually, the combat system's pretty solid in this one.
Yeah. But then they have bosses where you walk around and they throw things at you and you throw the things back at them.
Yeah.
And then a whirlpool boss, and that's it. The final boss of this game, which I guess we'll get to
momentarily.
Yeah. Isn't the worst thing, but I think I only think that because it's like the only time that I ever lost all of my health.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't die because I had dream fluffs, but I did run out of health once.
I actually thought the final boss was pretty easy and kind of almost felt like a victory lap boss.
Well, I mean, none of them were hard.
True.
You could debate that the one in Bob's Bottles is hard because you just have to keep your eye out for a lot of things. I had some trouble with the one in the Cookoff because it was just vomiting shit. Like there were so many. It was like the damage zones. Yeah, because the vomit would hurt you. That annoyed me. Yeah, I died to that one. Well, and like the first boss. Yes, the Hollis's Hot Streak boss.
Oh yeah.
With the big robot. Is like basically the same boss. Like they just throw like some towers down for you to stand on.
That one was easier to deal with though, because like the levitation bubble would protect you from electricity. Yeah. So it wasn't hard to avoid. That one I liked because it felt very set PC. Like it had the other characters involved and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I liked about the final boss.
Yeah, that was
game
fun,
because the characters actually came back and did stuff. But yeah, I think that's just gonna be our bit on bosses. Honestly, it's a
definitely
mixed bag.
Yeah, definitely
mostly not great.
Yeah, definitely a step up from the first one, but still not very good.
It's like a mixed bag of Halloween candy, but like the old timey kind, where really there's like one good Halloween. It's like
there's like a strawberry flavored thing.
Yeah, like a strawberry chew is like the good one, and then everything else is like hard toffee. There's like candies that come in like a clear cellophane wrap. Yeah, that no one knows what
like
they are.
Butterscotch something.
Sometimes, other times they taste like cough syrup, and it's like a fucking coin toss.
Yeah,
that's the bosses.
Yeah, that's the bosses in this one.
So then you go into an incredibly long string of levels right at the end where you do you just flew through these.
No, I mean, I feel like it's 2 levels that are both just long. Yeah. But not a long string of levels implying that there's a bunch of them.
Well, it's those 2 levels that are long.
Yeah.
And then you commence the end game, and then it is.
Oh, I'm just talking about Maligula, whatever her real name is. You do her level, and then you do Nick's, and that's it.
Well, you do Nick, Maligula, Nick, Nona.
Nona's her name. Yeah, Nona's first, and then it's Nick.
Nona, Nick, Maligula. Because you do the final boss after you do.
But is that even a? Should be in front of the mic. But Maligula is just a boss fight, though, isn't it?
Sure, but it comes right after to me, like, one of the longest and debatably least engaging levels in the game, even though I really like the look of it, which is Nick's level. Nona's level, which is like, it's
pretty short.
It's a short level that has like a lot of sort of, this is also not, I didn't count this as being like one of my less preferred levels, but it really isn't that engaging. It has a good look. It has a Yoshi's Woolly World.
Yeah, it's just like a story thing.
Yeah. But it is like, it feels like they were like, we can't just have them walk through here, so just like, fight 10 guys.
Yeah, here's some figments.
Yeah. And you're like, okay, I guess.
Here's all the emotional baggage at the end.
At the end in a big pile.
Yeah.
And then you do the final boss. But I started this, like, escapade, and was like, the last level of this game probably won't take more than like an hour or something. And it was like 3 hours before I was finished. And I was like, Jesus, like this, it felt like it went on for so long, unexpectedly. And I mean, part of that is definitely that there's like some interstitial stuff that happens between them, but yeah. So how did you feel about Gerlovia?
You mean like the narrative revelations, or do you mean Nick's level?
Let's do them both, because Nick's level is mostly narrative revelations.
Yeah. I guess it's hard to put my feelings into words, because I feel like the first game didn't really have much story to it. It was more just like kind of classic video game. It leaned on its characters a lot. And this one is kind of similar. It does focus on the characters and like what's going on with them. And then at the end, you get more into this story about how really it's with Ford. Like once you put his mind back together is when the ball really gets rolling. The levitation ball gets rolling.
The giant bowling ball gets rolling.
And you find out that there is a big bad guy or woman named Maligula that the Psychonauts all fought back in the day, and it basically just kind of left them all in shambles. And that Ford went inside her mind and made her forget who she was, and disguised her as Raz's grandma, because she had killed his grandparents and orphaned his dad, so he put them both together as family, and that's the twist, is that your grandma is the bad guy the whole time. And I think it works well enough. It's kind of a lot that's laid out pretty quick, would be my only thing about it that feels kind of sloppy, but I think it mostly works.
Yeah. The connection between you and Lucretia.
Yeah, that's her name.
Yeah.
Lucy, yeah.
Yeah. It's a little bit Palpatine is your grandfather to me, but I think I'm just primed for that because Palpatine was my grandfather, and Valmart was my dada, but
and you're half Dracula.
And also I'm half Dracula. Happy Halloween, everybody. But it didn't faze me necessarily.
It's a cliche.
A bit, yeah. But I think everything else, I really liked the unfolding of Ford's story with Lucy.
Yeah. Like the getting the backstory of all the Psychonauts was cool. Like if you would have asked me going into the game, like if I would have thought that would have been like a good direction to take the story, I probably would have said no. I don't think that would be what's interesting about the world of Psychonauts, but they proved me wrong.
So what I want to know is, did you see the Nick Johnsmith twist coming?
Oh, not even a little bit.
Me neither. And I can't tell if it's because they just didn't set it up specifically so that you wouldn't get it, or if like it was a real good twist.
I think it sits a little in the middle. There is setup for it, because like they set up the whole thing about the mole, and then the fact that like Nick's brain's gone missing, and they managed to do the magic trick of the twist where like you don't think of it, you just forget that detail.
So
there is some setup, but it is pretty loose. But yeah, no, I think it is pretty solid. It's a solid twist, I'll say. It gets a B.
Yeah, and that sets up sort of like the whole aesthetic decision for Nick's level, which ends up being this like fucking it's a small world after all. Right?
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, I did too.
That the level was a dark ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I thought that was super great. I don't love the decision to make it a pure like cutscene.
Yeah, to just make you ride through it.
Yeah, without making it a cutscene. Yeah, you know.
I knew that you would hate that, but you were totally justified because it was annoying.
Yeah, like I wish that it had just been. I mean, if they had made it a Buzz Lightyear ride,
you should have been able to like at least like shoot.
Yeah,
like if you could do anything, that would be preferable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I wonder if that was maybe just too complicated to fucking deal with.
Yeah, you could make it like a shooty, like a Men in Black or Buzz Lightyear ride, where you just shoot targets.
That would be kind of cool.
That would have been fun, yeah.
And like you should,
and
like
you get a score at the end. Because they do the thing where it takes your picture.
Mm-hmm.
Why not give you a score at the end?
Exactly.
That'd be fun.
But that's really the only thing, because like, honestly, like it's an incredibly memorable level. Mechanically, it isn't much of anything.
No, I feel like it worked for me though.
Yeah.
I don't really have a good reason why though. Like I agree with what you're saying, but I feel like I liked it anyway.
Mm.
A touch that I really liked, it's just like a little Easter egg, is that all the kids from the first game are figments.
Yeah, in the camp part.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice touch.
I also like that when you walk towards the cabin, they shrink.
You get smaller.
Mm-hmm. And I remember being like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I was looking forever to find whatever is in one of the cabins. And then I was like, all right, yeah, we're in a brain.
Yeah.
Like, it gives such a good impression of, like, a dark ride that I I separated it completely from it also being like one of the brain levels. So
yeah, and it is cool that Elijah Wood gets to play the villain.
Yes, he does a good job.
Like one of the villains.
It was weird because he very much kind of just uses his Elijah Wood.
Oh yeah,
voice.
It's just his regular voice. I think that might also be part of what makes you not see the twist coming. Is because like. I had this thought, like, as you brought up at the very, like, beginning of the cast, Elijah Wood did a voice in Broken Age, and I think is now just friends with Tim Schafer or whatever, at least on good terms with him. So I was thinking, like, is Elijah Wood going to do a voice in this? And as well as Jack Black. Like, I didn't know. I didn't look into it.
Right.
And they both do voices. So, like, when Elijah Wood just shows up as, like, the joke John Smith character who has his head in a vice or whatever he's doing. Because he has his brain taken out. I was like, oh, okay, like, Elijah Wood is probably a busy actor. They got him in to do, like, this joke bit part, and that's it. And then he ends up being the villain, and it made the twist hit harder for me, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and everything sort of, like, worked out. I don't know if we necessarily want to go over anything particular in the last level of the game, or in the previous level of the game, in Nona's level. Because there isn't.
I'm glad that you just said that, because I just wanted to make a dumb joke that's just for you and not for Daniel at all.
Oh, good.
But I had another. We've been taking. I guess this requires some setup if I'm going to say it. But I made a comment to you, however long ago it was now, like a year or so, that I've been keeping a tally of all the times I feel like I'm a brain in a vat. And I had a recent thing with that because you just started sewing some patches onto a jacket, and you brought up the fact that all pin cushions are the little tomato. And in Nona's level, the little tomato pin cushions are a little bouncy thing to bounce on for to collect collectibles. And also this morning, I worked on an ad for a like a mending company that somebody had, and they had some clip art of one of those tomato pincushions on it, and it's like, you just mentioned it like 3 days ago, and I've seen it every day since.
Yeah. And you
so
were like,
that's another tally.
Because I was like, have you noticed that all of these pincushions are always
and I
little
hadn't.
tomatoes? And you're like, no, I didn't
I had
notice.
not. But now I do.
So
it also thematic to Psychonauts, Brain in a Vat.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to bring that up since you mentioned known as level.
Yeah, that is true.
But other than that, I don't really have anything to say about it.
Yeah. So let's just kind of wrap up and get sort of like the continuation, the end of the story. Having not only Elijah Wood is playing the villain, but they've sort of like, I'm sure that this was mentioned at some point in Psychonauts, but I do not remember it. But this nation of Grulovia.
Yeah, I think it's Raz's backstory is a lot less talked about. Like, I do think it comes up.
Yeah.
And it feels weird, the decision to make it so disconnected, though. And, like, Raz's dad ends up being, like, a part of the final boss in the first one. And then in this one, his family's also really important, but they have, like, no screen time.
Yeah.
Just weird. But anyway.
They do have a lot more screen time than in the first game.
Yeah.
But,
which was none.
Yeah, which is 0 screen time. But yeah, it's an interesting sort of, like, choice, I guess. Like, they had this one connection and they expanded it into this whole backstory of this country that's like in fucking shambles and is led by like a horrible despot. And it's I found the level so funny that I was really into this whole backstory and shit.
Yeah, like, I think it
came
works.
up.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the conclusion of the story. Everybody ends up pretty chill with everyone, and they put Nick Johnsmith in the psycho-isolation chamber.
Right.
The Finn.
Yeah, and it does kind of have this, like, generational kind of theme to it, with, like, Ford and Raz and Lily and her dad and all that stuff. And it does feel like it puts a nice little bow on that. Like, you get to, like, put the past right, you know? Yeah, like, kind of cliche, corny stuff, but, like, executed pretty well. Like, it works.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of this, not only I'm gonna edit all the silence out, everyone, but before this we got distracted by a bug, and then
an arachnid,
and then
he's right there.
Yeah. And are now coming back. But then also, this next thing I'm going to say is a big non sequitur. But speaking of things that were obviously set up as tells for Nick Johnsmith being the villain, is his name being Nick Johnsmith, which isn't his real name. It's a name he came up with that is just nonsense.
Yeah, it's an obvious fake name.
Yeah. And I love that they just put it in unflinchingly.
Oh yeah, because it's Tim Schafer, I assume, leaning into, like, leveraging his style as a strength, because he knew he could do something that blatant and no one would question it, because he would totally just do that.
Yep. And that worked super good.
Yep. I was none the wiser.
What are your other notes, or did we get them all?
I wanted to bring up the figments, because I feel like the first game, and I kind of briefly mentioned that, is like, it's of a different era. It's more like, maybe not quite old school hard, but like old school hard by, like, today's standards for sure. There were parts of it that I remember feeling like you kind of had to beat your head against, or like the idea of getting all of the figments in, like, Mila's level sounded just awful.
Yeah.
But in this one, collecting the figments, it still has the same problem where they're two-dimensional, and it's baffling to me. But I guess they couldn't change it at this point. But it felt so much more accessible to collect all the stuff in this one, so much so that I actually did it.
Hey!
Yay, go me. But yeah, I just thought that was, like, they felt like they maintained their reputation of like being hard to collect them all, but did a great job of updating it to like our modern standards, and it felt like so much more doable.
Yeah, there was an update that came through last week at the time of recording.
Yeah.
That put a little check mark next to any areas where you got everything in them.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, I want to say 80% of the collecting before that feature was implemented. When I came back and they had implemented that, I had, I think, 2 levels left.
Yeah. That was like a godsend for me. I didn't know that was an added.
It's a fucking nightmare to try and find like the last, like, if you did Psy-King Sensatorium, right? It's got like 290 whatever.
Yeah, it's got
figments.
A lot of them.
And if you were missing 3, good fucking luck finding that.
Yeah. For me, I feel like the hardest level was the Cassie's library.
That one I actually got. I was missing 1 figment when I went back to it. For me, it was Bob's Bottles. It was
that one had some tricky ones.
Yeah, and the points, like your teleport points, were really far apart, so it was hard to tell where in the level the figment would be.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, when because you actually had this experience this time, I rarely get to connect with you on a getting all the dumb collectibles level.
Yeah.
It is always, maybe not always, it is most of the time like, oh, where's the last figment? Right there. It's just like a dumb one that you somehow overlooked.
That happened to me at least twice.
Mm-hmm.
It was a figment right at the beginning of the level.
I had one,
and like, I thought that I had like looked around for it and like somehow just completely overlooked it. And once again, probably because they're 2D.
Yeah, the last one that I picked up in Bob's Bottles, and actually there's a notorious figment in Bob's Bottles that is a banana.
Yep. It wasn't the last one I got, but it was one of the last 5, because like that was dastardly, because there was another one in a tree that was a coconut that I also hadn't gotten. I was like, that's dastardly.
Yeah, it's pretty well hidden, but I actually did get that one. The last one that I got was just one of the, like, I don't know what these are called, cattails, like the little swamp plants with the big thing on the end. That was just on a lily pad that I had to have jumped on.
Oh, yeah.
And not only did I have to jump on it, but I had to have jumped on it like 2 or 3 additional times while searching the level for it. The figments are kind of a nightmare, but it's like...
They have more of a particle effect in this one that makes them easier to see, but it's still pretty questionable. Like the last one I got in Hollis's Hot Streak, that was the one. It was just white. And like I could clearly see it,
that big
and
7?
Just didn't know it was a figment.
Yep, I remember that one. I also missed that on my first one go through as well.
I actually in that quality of light patch, they implemented a camera filter that lets you see the figments, but I actually ended up not needing it. Like I remember like using it a few times and just being in a room where there weren't any, and then moving on, and then just finding them on my own. So.
The one level where that was useful to me was, again, Bob's Bottles, because you could look out basically onto the horizon and find the islands that had like little plant ones that obviously I missed.
Some little grass.
Yeah. But on the flip side, big improvement in this game is the Psytanium replacing psychic arrowheads potentially for racial sensitivity reasons.
Yeah.
Or just, it's no longer in a camp, and therefore it is no longer thematic. The fucking dowsing rod is burning in hell where it belongs.
Yeah, that's definitely one of those other places where it feels like old school. It's not something that all games did, but games definitely did in that era where they just put up roadblocks where they're like, you have to engage with the game this much to proceed. Which is, just not something you really see anymore. And that's a particularly egregious example, at least that I can think of.
Yeah.
Like, go get 800 of these things.
Using the worst minigame in the game. But that's pretty much it. Like... we were talking about collectibles, like the pins. Like, I got all the pins, and most of them were like, I already mentioned this a bit.
Yeah.
There's like some that are fun, and I really liked the fun ones, but having them limit you to only having 3, they were so limited. I felt like you should be able to equip a lot more, especially since if you're me, you're always going to have the magnet one on. If a magnet thing is offered in a game, I will be using it.
Yeah, the pins felt a little bit too much like fluff to me.
Like, and the dream fluffs felt like fluff as well.
Because, like, I know that you engaged with them, but, like, they made me buy one in the tutorial, and it was the only one I had for, like, most of the game. And I was trying to think of why that was, because I was thinking about, like, Hollow Knight, which has, like, a charm system, which is basically the same idea.
Yeah.
But it feels like more core to the gameplay in that, whereas the pins just kind of feel like cherries on top. A lot of them are just cosmetic.
Yeah.
So I didn't really engage with them, but I did end up with like the magnet one by the end, and I found out why I didn't buy the bigger wallet when I thought that I had looked for it was there's the item right next to it, like that holds more dream fluff, is called like the something like wallet or something pocket, and I bought that instead of the wallet upgrade. And then because I'm me and wasn't buying pins, I just didn't notice that I had bought the wrong thing for like 10 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the money was because
I bought the cores to like level up my rank, and those weren't ever really. They were like 25 Psytanium.
Yeah, there's like no. If you aren't buying pins, there's like literally no reason to ever spend money.
Because like I had like 100 Psytanium just
for the whole game
forever. Yeah, until like 2/3 of the way in.
Hey, but at least you didn't have to get that 100 Psytanium by fucking breaking your thumb on the triangle button.
True dat. Or Googling the exact spot to stand so you didn't have to push the button so fast.
Do we have Figment thoughts?
My Figment thoughts are, this game is really great. Because I just played the first one all the way through for the first time like 2 years ago. So this isn't like a nostalgic favorite I've been waiting for a sequel for forever. But like I really remember hearing about the sequel and being excited about it, because it seems like the kind of game that really deserved a second chance at life. And I'm glad that it got that and that it turned out this well. One thing I brought up on the first episode was this thing that I call the Double Fine problem, where I feel like a lot of their games start out really strong and then felt like they ran out of money. And I said I hope that the Microsoft buyout alleviates that, and it seems like it definitely did. This game is much more even qualitied throughout than pretty much any of their other games that I can really think of. So hell yeah. I've grown a lot of respect for Microsoft for like funding the myriad of different studios that they've purchased, so I hope keep that up. But yeah, this game, I mean, I think it is like a great modern update of the first one. It feels like Psychonauts 2 feels as good to play as like I feel like you remember the first one feeling, right? I feel like that's got to be a really hard thing to do, to like update. Like Raz feels the same to control as I remember him controlling. So I think they did a great job with that, and not just with like gameplay, but also with the story. Like the tone feels pretty much the same. It has lost a little bit of edge, a little bit of that like early 2000s angst, I guess, that they had while working on the first one. But I think that's arguably like mostly to its benefit. Yeah, this was just really great to play. It was like a nice surprise. Like I didn't expect it to be as good as it is. So yeah, really glad that this happened. Like a big like game revival success story, I think. Like it's just a really good sequel and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. If somebody had asked me what I wanted out of Psychonauts 2, I would have told them, fucking no. Because I don't. And to this day, I still don't know what it is that I want from a Psychonauts game. What I got from Psychonauts 2 was a lot more similar to Psychonauts 1 than I would have expected. And arguably, that's probably the best thing about it, is it's a game that knows what it is, and it knows what its fans want, and it churned out something that was fucking good. Like, it's just an improved version of the first game, and while some of the levels lack the really jarring creativity that was in the first game, like the stuff that you would get dropped into and go, oh fuck, like this is what we're doing today, like that kind of got sucked out, but maybe that's just experience with the game speaking. But a lot of the stuff in this game is just very solidly designed. Psychonauts 1 is like a classic 8.5 out of 10 kind of game, where anyone who has experience with video games, who plays it for the first time, most likely is going to be like, this is a solidly designed platform, and they'd probably say this is also pretty funny as well.
Yeah.
I liked the jokes. Psychonauts 2 feels like it hits that same balance, but in both instances, the games are just so far in my, like, realm of taste that I've just really enjoyed both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend Psychonauts 2 to people who have played Psychonauts 1 and to people who have not played Psychonauts 1.
Yeah, you definitely don't need to have played Psychonauts 1.
Yeah, I think it is just genuinely a very good, especially if you're like an Xbox owner and the big game that like is selling your console is a first-person shooter, and there's sort of an identity around that brand. This is a really good platformer that is not only like available on the Xbox, it is also like an Xbox branded thing. Like,
yeah,
like you mentioned about like the Xbox Game Studios funding, like it really does mean something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd put this up there with, like, Mario Odyssey as, like, one of the most accessible platformers that I feel like people who usually don't play them would like this.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to be talking about The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Why did we wait so long to talk about it?
You'll find out. This will be a fun one. And I guess it's probably worth mentioning that we will be talking predominantly about the 3D re-release on the 3DS.
Yeah, that's what we'll both be playing. I don't have a 3DS capture card, so if you're watching on YouTube, I don't know where I'm going to source the footage from. The footage will probably be from the original game.
Yeah, that would make sense.
If that'll annoy you, I'm sorry.
But until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find our email address, our Twitter account, link to the Discord where we talk about the games, or you can find our YouTube channel where you can watch all of our old episodes. Including Psychonauts. Can you believe it, ladies and gentlemen? We've also talked about, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Super Mario Odyssey. Technically, we talked about Broken Age, but that's
yeah, 3D World we did recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do actually kind of a lot of platformers. We got Unshackled from JJ. And
we don't have a lot of them in the catalog because of JJ for so long,
mm-hmm.
but we've been doing them. We've been making up for lost time.
We sure have. So yeah, check those out and buy the subscriber pin so that you can identify as a NoClip subscriber to all your friends.
Buy the comment pocket upgrade so you can post more comments in the comment section.
Use Psy Blast to ring that bell.
Yep, that's it.
Yep, alright. Ground pound that like button. Whatever. I don't know. Oh. Oh, it's Psychonauts are we talking about today?
Oh shit!
I thought we were talking about Coconuts.
I thought we were talking about Cocoa Puffs.